I now give the floor to His Excellency Murat Nurtleu, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me first congratulate His Excellency Philemon Yang on his election as the President of the current session. I assure him of my country's full support and wish him every success in his noble endeavors. Excellencies, as we gather here, global system is dangerously close to a breaking point. Dozens of our fellow member states represented in this august hall are gripped by conflict and instability, claiming many thousands of lives. Entire continents are affected by the climate crisis. Multilateralism is struggling to keep pace, and yet the United Nations is still the indispensable universal organization. After almost 8 decades, it remains a vital platform for dialogue and cooperation on the most acute issues of our time. This undeniable fact compels states to keep working through the UN towards a sustainable world. Yet it reinforces our determination to seek global peace and stability. And this green podium, this hall, remind us that no nation, no matter how powerful, can tackle global problems alone. Excellencies, the plight of millions of conflict victims worldwide across the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and parts of Africa deserve immediate, decisive, and collective action. But the UN Security Council's decision-making process is paralyzed, as underscored by the Secretary General. This sad reality undermines the credibility, legitimacy, and effectiveness of the organization as a whole. Having annual discussions about reforming global institutions is no longer enough. It is time to enact the change our world so desperately needs. Last year, from this podium, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev of Kazakhstan introduced the initiative of World Unity for Just Peace and Harmony. This visionary framework seeks to cultivate peace, stability, and security through meaningful and equitable engagement between the global South and global North. The voice of middle powers and developing nations are vital in bridging divides, and nurturing a more effective international security architecture. It is in this spirit that I invite all nations to embrace my country's initiative. Together, we can pave the way for a more harmonious and united world. Excellencies, the pressing risk of another nuclear arms race is exacerbating geopolitical polarization. For over 4 decades, Kazakhstan's people and land were subject to the devastating effects of 456 nuclear tests. Nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation are key pillars of my country's foreign policy. Kazakhstan is therefore deeply concerned by the escalating rhetoric of nuclear threats. We appeal to all nuclear states to adhere to the Non-Proliferation Treaty and Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. I also urge those countries who have not joined the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons to do so as soon as possible for the safety, stability, and survival of our world. As the chair of the 3rd meeting of the TPNW, we will promote establishment of an international trust fund for assistance to victims of nuclear tests. Excellencies, another existential threat to no nation can afford to ignore is climate change. This year, is expected to be the hottest on record. Droughts, floods, and other weather calamities continue to cost lives and damage economies around the globe. We therefore call again on G20 countries and multilateral development banks to share the burden by providing green technologies and concessional financing to low and middle-income countries in line with the Paris Agreement. Our region stands on the front line of global warming, despite accounting for only 1% of global emissions. Central Asia will face an above-average 2.5-degree increase in temperatures by 2050. This sober reality has deepened our commitment to addressing climate change. That is why my country will host the Regional Climate Summit in 2026, aimed at further enhancing cooperation among UN members on climate resilience and green transition. One of the consequences of climate change is water scarcity across the world. It undermines food, energy, ecological systems on every continent. 1 in 4 people today lacks access to safe drinking water. And if this trend continues, by 2050, more than 5 billion could suffer water shortages. In Central Asia, by that time, water deficiency will affect 25 to 30% of the population. Meeting this challenge requires both serious political will and resources, including scientific and economic ones. As the current chair of the International Fund for Saving the Aral Sea, Kazakhstan is working with regional partners on a long-term and sustainable cooperation mechanism for the effective use of water and energy resources in Central Asia. Our approach takes into account the interests of all stakeholders in irrigation, hydropower, and environmental protection. Excellencies, the largest landlocked country, Kazakhstan, actively promotes the interests of all LLDC countries in addressing the multifaceted challenges our group faces. Despite significant strides, we are still far from implementing the Vienna Programme of Action. We are lagging on critical indicators, particularly the adoption of innovative technologies for trade facilitation and the development of transit and transport corridors. These challenges magnify the vulnerability of LLDC's choke of investments, diminish trade, and escalate the debt burden. Furthermore, our geographical constraints prevent us from integrating fully into global trade and economic processes on an equal footing. We are dedicated to advancing our group's vital interests globally and regionally. My country is already a bridge for 80% of overland transit cargo traffic between Asia and Europe. Kazakhstan is committed to strengthening synergies between the Belt and Road Project, the Global Gateway Initiative, and the North-South and Trans-Caspian International Transport Road corridors. Together, we have the unique potential to transform our landlocked status into land-linked connectivity. Excellencies, the Summit of the Future distinctly highlighted digital transformation as the dividing force behind the 2030 agenda. But the true key to this shift is ensuring every nation has equitable access to cutting-edge technologies. The rapid development of AI exacerbates cyber threats and brings new challenges. This includes its potential use in warfare, the consequences for data privacy, the risks of misuse for information wars, deepfakes, and more. Kazakhstan believes the UN can and must play a leading role in this revolutionary field. We urge technologically and digital advanced states to take an active part in developing common ethics and standards to govern AI in the most responsible and peaceful way. The establishment of a UN AI office would be a welcome step in this direction. Excellencies, in the current geopolitical landscape, Central Asia is increasingly asserting itself in global affairs. Our region is not only a crossroad of cultures and economies, but it is also rapidly transforming into a bridge for cooperation between East and West. We adhere to the formula successful Central Asia, successful Kazakhstan. Along with our partners, we are building a more connected and resilient Central Asia through a set of C5+ dialogue platforms. Today, our regional agenda also includes the development of Afghanistan into a stable and predictable state, a reliable trade partner. In this context, the United Nations Regional Center on Sustainable Development for Central Asia and Afghanistan in Almaty will be a game changer for coordinated SDG delivery. We do hope this innovative undertaking will receive broad support from member states. Excellencies, upholding human rights is not merely an aspiration, but one of the key prerequisites of sustainable development. It's also the best antidote against those inequalities that are often the root cause of instability and conflicts. Our national reforms aim to build a just and fair Kazakhstan based on inclusivity, transparency, and the rule of law. My country has abolished the death penalty, instituted a zero-tolerance policy against torture, and strengthened national preventive mechanisms. To reinforce our commitment to the values of life and humanity, Kazakhstan, along with our Central Asian neighbors and Mongolia, is spearheading the initiative to become the first region entirely free of the death penalty. Safeguarding women's rights and ensuring children's safety are top priorities of my president and government. We are advancing the UN Human Rights Council agenda by proposing impactful resolutions focused on child education and combating domestic violence. Being one of the champions of repatriation of women and children from conflict zones in the Middle East, Kazakhstan will host an international conference in 2025 on best practices in the field of repatriation and reintegration. Through partnership with the UN volunteers, we are creating new opportunities for young people and actively promoting 2026 as the International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, both at home and on the global stage, Kazakhstan and its people stand resolute in our commitment to build a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future. Central to this mission is our unwavering dedication to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, embodying our shared aspiration for humanity. As we look ahead to the 80th anniversary of the United Nations next year, I urge all states to unite in the full implementing this ambitious agenda. We have the chance to transform this upcoming historical milestone into a true celebration of shared achievements. Let the Summit of the Future and the UN General Assembly session mark the beginning of a transformative journey towards a brighter and more inclusive future for all of us, our children, and coming generations. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Kazakhstan.